Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa. I'm Nadia Massi this Friday in for Georgia Calvin-Smith. The headlines on the continent. Fresh drama in Kenyan politics as President William Ruto names his new deputy, but the previous Vice President, Reggie Khumalo, fighting his impeachment, saying the allegations against him are politically motivated. President Faye of Kenya visits the Kidugu region devastated by floods. The United Nations warning now over 6 million people in West and Central Africa are affected. And a bit later on in the programme, I'll be speaking to the South African fine artist Reggie Khumalo about his exhibit at the also known as Africa Art Fair here in Paris and why he rode on a motorbike all the way from Cape Town to Cairo. First, though, we start with that latest political turmoil in Kenya. President William Ruto today has named his new deputy, but it's far from clear that Kithure Kindiki will take on the job because Kindiki's predecessor is challenging his impeachment, saying the allegations against him are politically motivated. Reporting now from Nairobi for us, here's Olivia Bizot.
It's been another very dramatic day in Kenyan politics this Friday. On Thursday evening, the Senate voted to impeach the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua on charges that include corruption, ethnic division and undermining government authority. Now, the Deputy President was supposed to be in the Senate to defend himself on the 11 impeachment charges, but he was instead admitted to hospital where he was suffering from severe chest pain because of the stress of this whole process. That's according to his doctors and his lawyer. The senators decided to go ahead with the process despite him not being present to defend himself and ended up voting in favour of his impeachment. This Friday, Gachagua has challenged that vote at the High Court, and the High Court has said it will make a decision on October the 24th, so next Thursday. Kenya's President William Ruto has already named a successor, Kithure Kindiki, who's been the Interior Minister for the past 2 years. Now, that nomination was approved unanimously in Parliament, but then the High Court said the nomination could not go ahead until it had heard the case filed against the impeachment next Thursday. Now, earlier today, I was at the University of Nairobi where I spoke to political professors to better understand their reactions to everything that's been going on. And they told me that they were pleased with how this whole democratic process had taken place, but they did warn that anger could resurface against President William Ruto. A lot of activists on social media have said that he too should be impeached, and many are saying that this whole process has been a distraction from the aftermath of the anti-government protests that took place in June.
Olivia Bizot for us there. Now, experts from the United Nations say the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces are both using starvation tactics against millions of people. The group's authors concluded that, quote, never in modern history have so many people faced starvation and famine as Sudan today. With a look then at how individuals in the Sudanese capital Khartoum are coping, here's our report by Matthew Mary Karushat.
At this flatbread stall in Khartoum, long lines are a common occurrence, despite bread not always being available. Sometimes the merchant runs out of flour as the ongoing conflict has caused a 46% year-on-year drop in grain production. Many other shops have had to close.
Life is so hard. We have no drinking water, and the flatbread shops also face water shortages. We are out of food and water, falling into despair. The prices are also surging. Products that used to cost only 1,000 Sudanese pounds now cost 10,000.
Experts from the UN Human Rights Council this week accused both the Sudanese military and the Rapid Support Forces of deliberately using starvation tactics to gain an edge in the war. The UN estimates that about 2.5 million people in the country are facing famine. In addition, at least 20,000 people have been killed and thousands injured since war broke out in April 2023. The violence, coupled with cholera and hunger, has displaced over 10 million people, including nearly 3 million who have already fled the country. The UN has warned that the exodus is growing.
With 25,000 people arriving in Chad just at the beginning of October, that's much more than we've seen since the beginning of the year. In just 1 week, if we see 25,000, it's quite possible that in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll see 3 million more, and that would be a disaster.
Chad and other countries surrounding Sudan are facing their own crises and are struggling to accommodate the surge in refugees. A UN appeal for 1.4 billion euros to support Sudanese refugees and their hosts in the region through the end of the year remains just 27% funded.
Now, the United Nations envoy to the Western Sahara has proposed dividing the territory between Morocco and the pro-independence Polisario Front. This according to the news agency AFP. Western Sahara is largely controlled by Morocco, but the Algerian-backed Polisario Front has campaigned for independence for the territory for decades. Morocco, which controls some 80% of the area, advocates for a plan of limited autonomy for the Western Sahara, but under Moroccan sovereignty. Now, the Polisario is calling for a referendum on self-determination. This week, the United Nations released figures that suggest nearly 6.6 million people are affected by floods in West and Central Africa. In Senegal, residents living near the Senegal River say they are facing destruction not seen in decades. This after water burst the river's banks and swept through villages. Earlier on this Friday, the president, Bassirou Faye, visited the region of Kédougou to meet some of those affected, as Caitlin Kelly reports now for us from Dakar.
Images of destruction and devastation are circulating here in Senegal after 5 days of serious flooding in the Senegal River Basin, in a moment that locals are calling a tragedy. Hundreds have been forced from their homes and are in need of assistance, and one community in the south of 20,000 people have actually been cut off from the rest of the country due to damage to roads and infrastructure. This morning, President Diomaye Faye left Dakar to visit these worst affected communities. And although it's the first time we're really seeing the president respond to an emergency in his military get-up, the issue is one that is long-standing. Experts have pointed to poor infrastructure and a response system that's not really evolving with the impacts of climate change. The government have pledged 8 billion CFA, which is about $13 million in aid to these communities, but local groups say that they need more support and that the government are only just waking up to this issue.
Caitlin Kelly for us there. Now, there can't be many people in the world who have travelled from the southern tip of Africa to its very north on a motorbike. That rare feat was achieved in 2017 by Reggie Khumalo. He's a South African fine artist who is exhibiting his paintings this week at the also known as Africa Art Festival here in Paris. I'm delighted to say he's with me in the studio now. Good evening and thanks for joining us.
Bonsoir,
Bonsoir.
As the French say.
Indeed, bonsoir. We are delighted to have you here in Paris. Thanks for joining us. And look, I want to ask you first of all, about that motorbike adventure that I mentioned, because that was in 2017, and that was also the year that you became an artist, or a full-time artist for the first time. So tell us about that, about your journey and how it ties in with your artistic career.
So I basically went as low as I could, because I've tried to run. I tried to run away from being an artist for such a long time.
Okay.
I'm born with the gift. I'm an artist through and through, right? And everything fell off. And then I had only art to me, you know. So I decided there's nothing that I'm gonna do something that no one can ever take from me, and I'm gonna do something that I love that no one can ever take. So that was in between. I had to either I was gonna do paintings, and then with the paintings I'm gonna buy a motorbike because I love motorbikes, and then with that I'm gonna travel because I love traveling, you know. So I was prepared to be a homeless person for a while, right? And I was that for 4 years or so on the bike. And so I bought a motorbike, and then I put my bags on the canvas and the
everything
tent.
to paint with on your back.
Everything,
Wow.
and then I went across Africa. But the thing was to rediscover the artist in me, you know. And I thought the best way is to meet other Africans and go across the continent, you know.
And, you talk about rediscovering the artist in you.
Yeah.
You also say, you were a natural artist from a young person. But what's interesting about that to me is that actually you didn't have a formal training as an artist at all. So, I mean, why not?
Absolutely not. No, I don't know. Things happen that way. They happen. But at the same time, But
was it always your plan to be an artist?
It was never my plan.
Okay.
It was never my plan. And I was never really, I looked at artists like, oh, these guys are quite dirty. They're not cool. Well, they were cool, but they were quite, they were not organized, as we say. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I wanted to be a businessman and so on, like my dad was at the point. And then, everything, the spirit just led me to where it led me. And I had only art to turn to.
Yeah, and it took you on this remarkable journey, as I say.
Absolutely.
And you spent quite a bit of time on that journey from Cape Town to Cairo in Sudan. And I know that inspired at least one of your paintings. We mentioned Sudan in the programme, In the Grips of a Terrible Conflict. Tell us about Sudan and why that inspired you particularly.
I got to Sudan. I mean, I'd been through a lot of countries already, but I've experienced there's a African philosophy that we call Ubuntu. I am because you are, and you are because I am.
Right, it's Zulu, right?
Yeah, it's a Nguni term, I would say. That talks about the community living together. And I've been through Malawi, which was quite kind, South Africa too, all of the countries all the way until Sudan. But the Sudanese is a different kind of Ubuntu. It's a different kind of love. It's a different kind of caring for each other. They insist on being kind. They like it's a different kind of spirit for one another, And it was I almost call it radical Ubuntu. It was quite radical in its own form because they would just want to share. They want to just show you love, And going through, and that time I went through during the revolution.
Yes.
I was stuck in there, and there were people.
After the president was overthrown.
As they were overthrowing him, and. Just experiencing the power of what women what they do when they come together and when they say enough is enough. That for me was like it gave me chills on my body, and it was just like experiencing. I seen them standing on cars and wanting more for the family and wanting more for the country, for society. I was like, this I've got to put in my work. I've got to put in my work. And besides me being also almost, I would say, adopted by another woman in South Africa, Cindy Mawasokoana, who has been a big part of my journey and experiencing that love from a stranger. And this is the love that women carry.
Yeah.
And I thought I'm going to, from there onwards, my work is going to be giving platform to women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are lots of women, indeed, lots of portraits of women in
my work.
In your paintings.
Absolutely.
Before we let you go, though, I want to ask you about your work here in Paris. You're here at the moment as part of the also known as Africa Art Fair.
Yeah.
Why are you here? How do you find Paris as an artistic city? And just tell us how it's been.
So I'm here through the Fil Afrique gallery in Geneva, through Karen Bailey. So she applied. She told me Reggie, would you like to do this art fair? And I'd done a couple of fairs before, and I was like, this is actually quite in line with everything that I'm doing, and I would love to share my journey with Paris in this especially in such a setting, and. And Paris has always inspired my work, by the way, also too.
Okay.
In a sense, you see a lot of apples in my work. You see a lot of, it talks about Eden in a sense. This was my time going to Versailles.
Oh, really?
And then seeing the golden apple, the big golden apple on the grounds.
Okay.
And I was like, when it struck me so much that I was like, that is going to go into my work. This is Eden in a sense,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. That is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful way to end the programme. We are absolutely out of time. But a man who's travelled then from Cape Town to Cairo and also here in Paris, inspired by this very city. You've been listening there to Reggie Khumalo. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
As we were going up.
On the programme. And that's it from us. More world news coming up after this short break. Thanks very much.